Welcome to Takeover, the most underrated sports debate show on YouTube. I'm not feeling the best. I don't think there's ever been a segment where we were all wrong. But all of us was wrong.
Yeah.
So, apology to the Georgia fans. Takeover usually isn't wrong. We got it wrong this time. So I'll give a shout out to Georgia and to Kobe Dean. The guys got it done. Versus the Alabama team. I was missing a cornerback.
Don't do that, Kim.
Ah,
Don't do that,
I'm
Kim.
gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna leave it alone.
You were doing
But
so
shout out to
good.
Georgia. Shout
You
out
were
to
doing
Georgia.
so good. Listen, I didn't pick Georgia because Georgia burned me the first time I picked them, so I said never again. So of course I got burned. Back to back 0 for 2.
But as you know,
My name is Josh.
My name is Deandra.
it's your boy Cam, and this is Takeover.
Yeah, we play it all in night. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Nothing holding me back. 3 in the wood. Rush.
Takeover. So starting off, when topics come between you two guys, when it comes to the two certain players, you guys kind of niche towards. So I'm very interested about what you two guys are gonna say about this topic right here. John Morant is having a great season. I can say on the other side of the spectrum, Trae Young is having a great season as well. If you're a GM, who would you rather want on your team? John Morant or Trae Young?
Well, so first of all, Cam, I don't know how you're interested in what we're gonna say because I think you already know what both of us are gonna say.
Okay.
Who do you think I'm gonna say? Who do you think? You should have to think about
Trae?
this.
Is it
Absolutely, it's
Okay,
Trae Young,
okay,
and it's
okay,
quite
tell us
simple.
why.
I can do it multiple different ways. So we are going to do it multiple different ways. First of all, if you just go head to toe breakdown, right? Skills against skills, just like isolated in a vacuum. Defense, it's a wash because they both aren't very. Ja has his highlight plays, and that was an incredible block. Do not get me wrong, but he's also a little skinny. He tends to die on screens a little bit, just like Trae. So they're both. Ja is probably just a bit of a better defender, but it's not good enough to where it's like makes a difference. So then, if we get on offense, which is where they really shine, going to the rim, John Morant's better because John Morant is baby Westbrook. I mean, the dude has bunnies like crazy, and he's very, very good at, he's very coordinated around the rim. And while Trae is very coordinated around the rim as well, he's a below the rim athlete, so he's already inherently at a disadvantage. But when we start to stretch it out, Trae Young is shooting about 46 to 47% from the mid range areas, from about 15 feet from the basket to right in front of the 3-point line. John Morant is shooting in the 20s. All right, so mid-range has to go to Trae, especially since he is starting to take a lot more of those jumpers this year. Talking about three-pointers, as of right now, John Morant does have a higher percentage this season, but I'm still picking Trae because he's shown more consistency from that area over the last few years. This is the first year we've seen Ja actually hit threes consistently, and not to mention Trae hits the 30 football. And then passing, it's got to be Trae because honestly, I think Trae's the second best passer in the league behind Chris Paul right now because he's averaging 9.6 assists, which is like the third straight season. He's averaging 9 plus. So all in all, I'm going Trae. And the other reason I would pick Trae if I'm a GM is Trae Young is completely comfortable going into an opponent's house and being the bad guy. He is completely okay being the pro wrestling heel. And it's very rare to find that nowadays. Nowadays, everybody wants to be the good guy. Everybody wants to be cheered. Everybody wants to be loved. Trae Young is okay with 25,000 crazy New Yorkers screaming F Trae Young and spitting at him. And he will look back and love it and then come back and drop him off in 5 games. And that's the kind of guy I want to build my team around. I want somebody who is not afraid of the spotlight. I'm not saying that John Morant's afraid of the spotlight. We haven't seen John Morant in the spotlight yet. We've seen Trae in the spotlight, and he showed out game in and game out.
Preach. Go ahead.
Well, as you guys know, it's probably no surprise that I'm picking John Morant because I believe he's more talented when it comes to athletic ability, and he has more control and patience with the ball as well. And John's play really translates to wins, in my opinion. If you look at Trey right now, he's putting up numbers, and the Hawks are the 12th. They're the 12th seed in the East right now, and the Hawks have regressed. And I'm not putting that all on Trey, but when you look at Memphis, Memphis is on a 10-game winning streak, and they just beat Golden State, where John Morant had 29 points. And Memphis is number 4 in the Western Conference. Ja is third in the NBA in points, points in the paint, and
Trae's fourth. Points per game.
anyway, he's just as much of a playmaker as Trae Young, I would say. He's just as much of a leader as Trae Young, I would say, and he's definitely more of an athlete. The only thing that he doesn't have at the same capacity as Trae would be the 3-point shot, but since coming back from his injury, he's been hitting 53% of his threes. And now he's shooting 60% on a higher volume than any other non big man in the league. And although, like you said, defense really isn't his strong suit, he can give you steals and he can give you blocks. And you don't completely have to hide him on defense like Trae Young. And we've seen Trae play for 4 years now, but we pretty much know what we're going to get from Trae. We know we're going to get relentless shooting. We know that you're going to get playmaking, but you're going to get absolutely no defense. But with John Morant, he's in his third year and he progressively gets better every single year and he adds something to his arsenal every single year. So that's my argument. Oh, and you talked about how Trae Young is not afraid of the spotlight. I thought we saw John Morant go into a bubble and come one game away from being in the playoffs, and then the following year he went into the playoffs and
he balled out. He balled out in the first round. I saw Trae Young put 48 and 11 on Drew Holiday's head in Milwaukee.
So let me ask you this.
I saw Trae Young.
So let me ask you this question.
Take down the process.
If we're looking at the Atlanta Hawks right now, and we're looking at the Memphis Grizzlies, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at those teams, would you say that Memphis is inherently way better than Atlanta? When you look at how the teams are built?
their role players are playing better right now.
So some of that you bring up what happened last year, but we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and Trae is putting up 28 and 9 this year on the best efficiency of his career. Trae Young put up a 56.14 assist.
Cam, did you
game.
not ask about a GM, right? So if you're talking about the GM, you're talking about 14, right?
And they lost.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if we're looking at it stat wise, I get the numbers game, but these guys are both really good. If we really just want to go there. But one thing, I give Ja the edge for one reason. Of course you do. Y'all do research together. Hold on. Let me just tell you my reason why. Okay? Culture changer is a big word. It's hard to do. When I think of guys in the NBA who've changed the culture of the team, I think of Allen Iverson. I think of James Harden. I think of Shaquille O'Neal in when he played in Orlando. And now I'm starting to think Ja Morant. You look at what he's doing. Memphis wasn't really. They weren't popping. They weren't talking. No one was talking about Memphis before Ja came. They were built on grit and grind with the Mike Conley thing, but that had shifted away. Ja brought that back, and it feels like the players from Memphis are playing for Ja Morant. It's infectious. The way he plays, the way he talks, he's inspiring this team. Trae didn't change the culture in Atlanta. Nate did. And you can see that because Trae was putting up killer numbers before that. Nobody was just talking about him. I mean, Trae Young is a great player. We've seen Trae Young play live. He's a thrill to watch, but he didn't change the culture in Atlanta. Nate did, and he changed the whole entire team around. I can't say that John Morant has this super team or the super coach that has done that for him. And you name up all these great stats. I'm a Russell Westbrook fan, so I've heard of all great stats, but are they leading to what? Trae Young, over this 5-6 game stretch, he put up 56 and 7 versus the Blazers, 25 and 14 versus the Lakers, 26 and 11 versus the Bulls, 29 and 9 versus the Bulls because they played them two times in a row. Josh, do you know what the common theme between all these games was?
No, we lost all those games.
So what's the point? You know what I'm saying?
Listen, when you're starting Timothy Luwalu Cabarro at the 3.
Have the Memphis Grizzlies not have injuries as well?
I'm sure they've had injuries.
They've had injuries.
But let me tell you.
Dylan Brooks has been gone. He's won a game without
Okay.
Jaren Jackson.
Okay.
I mean, he's won games. I'm going to go ahead and finish my take before you go ahead and this. So I would rather take that. So what is that 28-4-9 doing if the Hawks are the 12th seed in the East? You got guys like John Collins saying we don't share the ball enough. As much as the scorer you are, you have to infect the games in different ways. And I think Ja's affecting the game in more ways than Trae Young.
What was Memphis's record when Ja was hurt?
They went on a win streak. They got together, yeah.
Okay, so Dylan Brooks is out right now. Does that mean that they necessarily play better without Dylan Brooks?
I don't know. I just know that
So
Memphis.
everything
I just know that the Memphis.
So everything
I
that
just
happened
know.
before all the games
I
that
just
won
know.
before it was because of Ja.
I just know that I saw Trae Young in the playoffs take him deep.
Sure.
And this year he's doing everything in his power. But when Clint Capella is still recovering from an Achilles thing, DeAndre Hunter played 11 games where he did not look good. Bogey doesn't look anything like what he used to be. Onyeka Okongwu just made his debut. Cam Reddish still can't figure out how to dribble a basketball without getting it stolen. It's
but
tough.
The Grizzlies have had
tough.
just as much COVID concern as y'all, and almost as much injuries as y'all as well.
Hey man, listen, I'm not trying to make it. The Hawks have been a huge disappointment, absolutely. None of it's been Trae. Trae's done everything in his power. If Trae's the only person that can get a bucket, that's not on him. Anyway, we're going to move on because I could keep defending Trae Young forever and ever and ever. He's as close to my heart as Matt Ryan. Speaking of Matt Ryan, we're going to move our way over to the NFL. The NFL playoffs are set. Neither of our teams made it, which I was okay
I
with.
hate Matthews.
Oh, man, I love him so much. He did what we should have done. Anyway, so the playoffs are set, and everybody has their favorites. Everybody's already making their Super Bowl predictions. But we need to talk about those guys that could sneak in and destroy some people's hopes and dreams. Guys, who is your sleeper team in each conference?
I'm starting the AFC, and I'm picking the Raiders. A lot of people they've been so on and off. They've had the most problems. You got their coach calling. You got the coach with derogatory terms. You have the whole how they got here is crazy. You got Henry Ruggs driving 150 miles per hour. There's this working made me laugh, but there's a lot of things going on, and they still overcame all that, and they went on a win streak, and they get it done. And this is the type of team that won't blow you up, but they stay in there. And a team that lingers, and I think they're in this position because of Derek Carr. Derek Carr this season has had 6 game-winning drives, and down the stretch he's made throws at a high clip. On Thanksgiving, he made the throws to beat the Cowboys. You got to think about the last game we watched. To me, it was the game of the year between him and Justin Herbert. He outdueled him at the end of that game, and he continues to get the job done. Not to mention this underrated run game with Josh Jacobs as well. And I think the recipe in football to me is opportunistic defense and great offense. So I think if you roll with Derek Carr and this team, they can definitely pull up a couple upsets. And I know they play the Bengals, which is probably someone else's sleeper pick, but I think it's going to be a great game between those two. But I'm shifting towards the Raiders. And when it comes to the NFC, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. Cam, are the Buccaneers really a sleeper? I think so. With all the drama between AB, Leonard Fournette, some of the guys on defense not being there, how good are they going to be? But one thing that hasn't changed about them, one person that hasn't left, is the greatest football player who's ever lived, which is Tom Brady. I've seen Tom Brady win a Super Bowl with a lacrosse player. I'm not counting Tom Brady out in any sort of circumstance, and I think they'll be ready to go come playoff time come this weekend. And Todd Bowles and Devin White are still gonna do their thing. So I'm taking the Bucks and the Raiders as my sleeper teams.
So I'm gonna start with the NFC, and it was kind of hard for me to pick anybody from there because I didn't really consider half of the people there at sleeper teams. But if I had to pick somebody, I would say the 49ers because they have some weaknesses, which would be at the quarterback position, and they have turnovers and overall just inconsistency. But you can see as the game we saw the game against the Rams, they're not an easy out. They went down 17 and they came back to win. And overall, I believe their defense is balanced. I believe it improves the more that they play, as we saw how they played against the Rams down the stretch. And overall, I believe the 49ers play a very physical ball game. That's something that not a lot of teams now tend to do. And they have playmakers in Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Elijah Mitchell. And I believe their run game is very physical too. And they can really tire a team out as well. And they can run out the clock on certain situations. And as far as the matchup with the Cowboys go, the Cowboys are 23rd in the league on how many rushing yards they give up. And the 49ers love to run the ball. And the Cowboys are 3 and 4 when it comes to the playoff, when they go against playoff teams. And the 49ers, since the middle of the season, have been 8 and 3. And finally, the Cowboys will cowboy. If any team is going to get upset, it will be the Cowboys. Because we've seen their ups and we have seen their lows. So if I'm banking on anyone to mess it up, it's going to be the Cowboys. Moving on to the AFC, of course, I picked the Bengals. The biggest weakness on the team, I think, would be the offensive line, but the Bengals had a really good team against the Chiefs. And the defense is underrated. Like, you have to play 4 quarters against them. You can't really sleep on them. And Joe Burrow is playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league as of right now. He's completing 70% of his passes. And also, I'm thinking about the weapons. I'm also thinking about the weapons that Joe Burrow has as well with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon. And I'm looking back at the last matchup that the Raiders had with the Bengals, and they really didn't have to throw the ball to beat them. They basically ran the ball the entire time, basically. And the Raiders' defense, to me, is kind of suspect. So I think they have to worry about stopping the run, which they didn't figure out how to do last time with Joe Mixon. And then you have, on top of that, you have to worry about Joe Burrow, and you have to worry about Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And then I just think the secondary is really going to struggle. So those are the teams that I have.
There is a common theme in the two teams that I picked for this topic here today. All right, and I goes back to what I said last time we were in the playoffs with the Bucks and the Chiefs, whatever that team was. If you can get after the quarterback in the postseason, I think you should be considered a big time team. And these two teams aren't exactly being talked about, even though they can do that. So starting in the NFC, I too picked the 49ers. All the stuff they said about Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, absolutely, they're fantastic players. They also have a great run game, and they have a fantastic play caller in Kyle Shanahan. He's not very good in the fourth quarter, but the first three, he's fantastic. But on defense is really where they scare you because they've got Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Arden Key, Samson Ebukam all had 5+ sacks. I think Ebukam had 4.5. So he's really close. The fact that they can get after the cornerback, and then on top of that, in the second level, they've got guys like Fred Warner roaming around. I think that defense is something that nobody's really going to want to talk about. And you say they have weakness at a quarterback position. Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl. Let's not disrespect Jimmy G too much now.
I'm talking about in reference to turnovers.
He doesn't change, but they won. He doesn't change the game. He makes plays when he needs to. He's a much better looking, taller Stetson Bennett. All right, and he just won a natty, so we'll go with that. And going to the AFC is going to sound crazy, but I have not heard this team mentioned as a favorite in any way, shape, or form. I'm picking the Tennessee Titans as my sleeper team.
Even though they're the number 1 seed.
Even though they're the number 1 seed. I did not know that they were the number 1 seed until the last week of the season. I did not know that they were still holding on to that and still beating teams. The moment that Derrick Henry went down, I was like, sticking a fork in them, they're done. And yet I looked at, they kept winning. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. I don't see anybody talking about them. I see it's about the Chiefs. It's about the Bills. It's even about the Patriots and the Bengals before they mention the Tennessee Titans. Why is that? I don't get it. The Tennessee Titans have 2 edge rushers on both sides. Bud Dupree had 16 sacks last year, and he is working his way back to 100% from an ACL tear, and he's gotten his snaps. Harold Landry's on the other side. He had double-digit snaps. Jeffrey Simmons is probably a top 3, top 4 defensive tackle right now. He can change the game inside. Not to mention, that secondary is balling out this year despite injuries everywhere. And then on offense, listen, if Derrick Henry comes back, it changes the complexion of the playoffs. No one can stop that man one-on-one. Not to mention, with Dearness Foreman, they were still racking up rushing yards. And Ryan Tannehill has regressed this year, but he still can deliver the ball when he needs to. And they still have a guy named A.J. Brown who is vastly underrated in my opinion. So they might be the number 1 seed, but I have not seen anybody mention them as a legitimate contender. So therefore, they're my sleeper team.
They've been on and off. That's probably why.
Yeah.
Because they win big games and lose to the Jets. Like you just don't like you just.
But
don't
you know what? Now they're playing all the big games.
Yeah.
So I'll take that kind of formula.
Definitely. Well, that's gonna wrap up our episode for today. Short and simple sometimes. You got anything to say, Joe?
Well, it's January 12th, so we're about 2 months and a week and a half away, and yet the Atlanta Braves are still World Series champions, despite the ongoing lockout, despite Hall of Fame voting, things changing in baseball. The Atlanta Braves are still your World Series champions. Jorge Soler's home run is still orbiting the Earth. I think it's on about 3 rotations. The Astros still haven't scored a run.
Well, that's all for today, folks.
Ice Trae the gang.
That's gonna wrap up our show. Takeover out.
Yeah, we play it all in night. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Nothing holding me back. 3 in the wood, rushing. I don't like Dutch, don't even matter. You know I'm a face, and when I roll a paper, I like to go double. Run up a